you want your legacy to be?
I would like to see our country be the champion of human rights, and every American embassy looked upon as a haven for those who suffer from human rights abuse. I'd like to see our country be the most generous on earth.
These are not just my goals, and they will not be my accomplishments, but the affirmation of our nation's continuing moral strength and our belief in an undiminished, ever-expanding American dream.
And happy Tuesday, and welcome to the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Tuesday, December 31st, 2024. It's the last day of the year. The last day of the year, and Val Atkinson is here. Hey, Val.
Hello, Ed.
Listen, we started this because we couldn't get in the studio over on another show we used to do during the COVID. And there was this clown named Donald Trump who was president, which nobody at the time could believe that he was president. And then we thought we were rid of him, but clearly he's like a bad flu or something. He keeps coming back, and we're going to talk about him, and we're going to talk about the year. But you know, we were talking, Val, before we came on about whether we were going to do just a year in review. But I think everybody knows what happened this year, so we don't have to do a strict year in review like we were anticipating at first. But we want to talk about a lot of things, so let's get that started. I want to start with you a question for you. At the beginning of the year, we had an expectation. I know what mine is, and I'll talk about it in a minute. I want you to go first. We had an expectation that we would be finally rid of Donald Trump. At least that was mine. And the reality, however, was something different. At the beginning of the year, Val, what was your expectation for the 31st of December 2024 and what it was going to be looking like going into 2025 compared to reality?
My expectation, Ed, was that Joe Biden was going to be sworn in again on January the 20th of 2025 for his second term. I felt that the Democrats would regain control of the House of Representatives and retain their control of the U.S. Senate. I really thought we were going to have a trifecta and win all three. And of course, I was wrong on all three counts, unfortunately. But that was my expectation. And if we would have won two or even won one and lost two, it would not have been out of the realm of expectation. But to lose all three was something in my wildest dream. I never expected that we would lose all three. So that really shocked and amazed me, as Muhammad Ali used to say. It shocked and amazed me, and I haven't really totally adjusted yet to that. I think it was something that in the annals of American political history, I think it'll go down as one of the unexpected travails of missteps that this country has ever made in re-electing Donald Trump, allowing Republicans to maintain control of the House and take over the Senate. But I know why. That's the good thing. It's the only saving piece I got going is I know why all of that happened. But it is something that definitely was not expected of me, and it shocked and amazed me.
Shocked and amazed is an understatement for me, but I really thought that Joe Biden was going to, have a hard-fought contest with Donald Trump. I did not foresee what happened at the first debate between Trump and Biden, and then the follow-up to it, and him quickly being pounced on by even people on the Democratic side encouraging him to get out. The campaign that Kamala Harris ran, I thought, was a valiant campaign, and that it actually was not that bad in terms of if you look at the outcome, but close only counts in tiddlywinks, I guess. And so we're not playing that; we're playing politics. So you got to win the most votes electorally. The number of votes Kamala Harris got was surprising. She's the third highest vote getter ever in any election in American history, which should not be discounted. However, again, it doesn't count because she lost. Over on the House side, the Republicans have a very slim majority, due to the fact that they were able to get the North Carolina legislature to gerrymander seats so that they would lose exactly 3 seats, which is exactly the number that the Democrats need to have Hakeem Jeffries as the Speaker of the House. Funny how that happened. And we told you here on the deal that North Carolina is a linchpin for a lot of stuff. People forget it's the 9th largest state. It has a hand in a lot of things, and we'll talk about that some more. And then I think the last part of this expectation versus reality thing for me is I kept thinking that all these reports that Black men and Latino men were thinking about voting for Trump. And then when they started saying Muslim folks in Michigan, and then other foreign folks like people from South Asia, Indian people in particular, were going to vote for Donald Trump, I was like, maybe not. But guess what, Val? Those polls turned out to be correct. And it didn't take that many. If you look across the country, Donald Trump only needed 150,000 people to swing one way or the other. And it would appear that he had some sort of mandate. But if you peel back the numbers, obviously he doesn't. He doesn't have the most electoral votes ever won. He didn't win by the largest margin ever, whatever. But again, it only counts in certain games. I guess curling, you can get close to the circle and still win. You have to have the most points. And then over on the Senate side, people like Joe Manchin, who is a traitor to the Democrats, and Kristen Sinema, I think spelled doom for the Democrats, where Joe Manchin was never, at least in the last part of his career, and Kristen Sinema, I'm not never sure what she was, were not good for the Democrats, but there were some seats that I thought the Democrats had an opportunity at where they lost in Ohio, where they had a very effective senator that made all the difference in the world, right? So you lose one seat and then everything's out the window. So like you said, the trifecta, so to speak, took place. So in terms of reality, I did not see any of that coming, Val. And I knew it was possible. I just don't like the outcome. So that's that. I want to remind you are listening to or watching the deal. We've been away for a few weeks. I had the cooties, Val had the cooties, and then Christmas and holidays and all that stuff. We felt like it was important to do a wrap-up show for the end of the year, and we got a lot planned for next year. One of the things that surprised me when I sat down and looked back at some of the old episodes we had, we're in year 5 of this, Val, and that's miraculous. We spent. I know you spent 31 years on one program. I spent 20 some years there with you, and now we're already 5 years into this. So it is amazing. I couldn't do this without your participation, and so I hope you know that. And then this year, I think we're going to go back to having some guests on. We didn't this past year because we wanted to spend a lot of time talking about the election and that kind of thing. But guess what? Like I said, my expectation and reality were two different things. I want to switch gears, Val, because one thing that happened over the last couple of days is Jimmy Carter passed away. Let's look at this clip and then we'll talk about Jimmy Carter.
And tension on the Egyptian-Israeli border.
I recognized before I was president the importance of the Mideast crisis between Israel and Egypt, because there had been 4 major wars in the previous 25 years. I was able to bring Sadat and Begin to Camp David, and we had a very successful 13 days there. And we came out with the Camp David Accords, which led 6 months later to a treaty between Israel and Egypt, not a word of which has ever been violated since.
Let us have 3 of us together.
Very good.
But the war.
So, Val, the old saw is that Jimmy Carter was a terrible president, blah, 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 blah. He was not. Jimmy Carter was a statesman. He comported himself after the presidency better than any other president, and he lived to 100 years old. Even while he was president, a lot of the things that were attributed to him were actually hangovers from Richard Nixon and his shenanigans. And then when he got in the White House, the economy was already suffering. He helped pull the economy back up like Democrats normally do. And then Ronald Reagan steps in. He uses the same racist tropes that Donald Trump uses. And as a matter of fact, his slogan is exactly the same as Donald Trump's Make America Great Again. We've talked about on this program before, Val, that Ronald Reagan goes to Neshoba County, Mississippi to launch his campaign because he knows that he needs to keep racist white folks on his side. And the Republican Party makes a complete switch from being the party of Lincoln to the party of racists. That is my assessment. and now Jimmy Carter is in the middle of this. He gets trounced by Reagan. Martin Luther King ain't been dead 15 years at that point. And they made a case that, hey, these Negroes are still a problem for you. I can keep these welfare queens and so on and so forth from taking over. So Jimmy Carter bears the brunt of it. So talk to me real quick. Put on your historian hat, Val. Put Jimmy Carter in some historical perspective for us.
Well, Jimmy Carter was not an accidental president, as some folks like to call him. Jimmy Carter came to light because the whole country was aghast when they learned what happened in Watergate. And they were so concerned that a message needed to be sent to the general public that we will not tolerate this type of shenanigans, and we are willing to do anything and accept anything to get our message across to you. That was a message to Republicans. And Jimmy Carter or Donald Duck or anybody could have won that election because America wanted to send a message to the Watergate clan. And they did that by resoundingly defeating Gerald Ford, who was a clone of Richard Nixon. When Jimmy Carter won, that was America saying, this is a race against Richard Nixon and all he represented. So I'm going to vote for Jimmy Carter, the peanut farmer from Plains, Georgia. So that's how he got in. And he began to do a lot of things, as your clip just witnessed, Ed, to really restore confidence from Americans in America in terms of looking at things like energy protection, looking at alternative energy means, getting back to the heart and soul of America about the goodness of America, and getting away from necessarily just the strict power surges about who can amass the greatest amount of power and rule the greatest amount of things and people. So Jimmy Carter brought that in. But of course, that stuck with him when he had to run for re-election. And people were not finished with the whole Nixonian approach to politics, which meant that Nixon still had the racial issue going for him. So it was no big thing for the Reagan folks to come in and attach their wagon to that star and say, hey, whatever you liked about Nixon, I can provide that for you, especially when it comes to race. And that's why, as you just pointed out, his first campaign was, of course, in the Neshoba County, Mississippi, the White Citizens Council, when he proclaimed that I'm your guy. Don't worry about Washington running things down here culturally or racially. And I'm the guy. He won that whole race, that whole political race on race issues, 100%. And Jimmy Carter, being the guy that he was, he wasn't a racist, but he wasn't really what we would call nowadays, Ed, an anti-racist. He did not come to your lips when you talk about the struggle for equality and fighting racism and that sort of thing. He did the things he was supposed to do, but he was not the drum major, as Martin Luther King talks about. He was not that kind of guy out front. So Reagan had a free path when it came to really talking about what he was going to do to restore power to white people in America. And he was going to make America great again. And everybody knew what that meant, going back to a place that most people of color didn't want to go back to. But too many white folks relished going back to that place. So he communicated, and he was the first one that people identified as using dog whistles and 7-second sound bites and bumper sticker slogans and all of those little short bursts communicative types of processes that didn't take a 1-inch thick white paper to communicate, and you didn't have to be a Phi Beta Kappa to understand it. And that's one of the reasons that Carter lost this race as well, and that we started a whole new era of Reaganism, and started down the road to allow somebody like Donald Trump to have the opportunity to be president of the United States. It all started with the Carter-Reagan battle.
Yeah, I like your assessment about Jimmy Carter. He was the son of Plains, Georgia. So he's coming after Lester Maddox as governor in Georgia. So you're talking about one of the most racist places, and then if you can win the governorship there, you're not going to be the most ardent anti-racist person. Now, you can be likable to black folks, but you're not going to take up their mantle. Now, one thing I will say is I have had the fortune of meeting every president, Val, since Gerald Ford, and spent significant time with several of them in past jobs or whatever. And for some reason, I kept running into Jimmy Carter a lot. And I'll tell you one story about Jimmy Carter. Right here in Raleigh, where I am today, he was at Quail Ridge Books at the old location. If people from North Carolina know where Quail Ridge old location is, over by NC State. And he was there to sign a book, and I had his book under my arm. I turned the corner, and I run right into him. And his Secret Service guy was a little bit further away. And I go, "Hello, Mr. President." He was like, "Hey." And he's like, "I guess you're here, for the book signing." I was like, "Yeah." I said, "Can you sign it?" So he takes my book. He's there 20 minutes early. And he signs my book, and we spend a good 20 minutes talking. He never moved from the spot. And he asked me, what did I think about the current political state of the world and the Middle East in particular, because the book was about the Middle East, and we were talking about that. And then, I told him that I had run into him before, and he said he remembered me from another time we had run into each other, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And just a genuinely calming presence for being a guy from the South, right? He never espoused that he was this anti-racist, but he definitely went out and built houses for elderly people and people that needed help and those kind of things. He brokered peace, so on and so forth. So Jimmy Carter is a much better president than he's given credit for. I don't have to make the argument for him. And on the way out, I hear some music in my ear. On the way out, you'll see another clip of some stuff about Jimmy Carter on the way back. And I want to talk about the current disarray in the Republican Party. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
I came along at a time when Americans still remembered painfully the lies told and the debacle of Watergate. I was outside Washington. I was not stigmatized by the mistakes that had been made in those previous years.
It's a long way from Plains, Georgia to Washington, D.C.
And I brought a fresh face of a peanut farmer, a working man who swore never to tell a lie or make a misleading statement.
Jimmy Carter from Georgia. I hope to be your next president.
I don't think that many kids in my son's school even do it.
He makes fun of his friend who vapes.
He would never try it.
She's into soccer.
She's on the honor roll.
She's just not the type.
No way.
No way.
No way.
No way, my kid would never vape.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping. Maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
He has since deleted many of those posts, including one that replied approvingly to a post calling American-born workers in general a slur, the R word, for being too stupid to be able to do the jobs that workers on H-1B visas were doing. One emblematic post is still up, where Musk tells opponents of H-1B visas to F themselves before pledging to go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend.
And welcome back to our second segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. It is the 31st of December, 2024. Now, if anybody had told me that 2024 was going to end up with Donald Trump on my lips, I would have smacked them on the 31st of December, 2023. But nonetheless, here we are. And Val, on the way back in, we saw a clip of, well, we thought he was Donald Trump's BFF, Elon Musk. But in the clip, Steve Bannon, who is an ardent racist, white supremacist, former jailbird, I can go down the list of all the bad things he is, but he has turned against Elon Musk. And because Elon Musk says that, and his buddy over at the Doge department, Vivek Ramaswamy, says that we need H-1B visas for foreign workers because they help grow American companies. So let's take a step back here. Where is Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Doge going to end up when you got people like Laura Loomer and Steve Bannon, and I suspect even Stephen Miller, who's the right-hand man of Donald Trump, not happy about this H-1B visa thing? Where are we going to be with this?
Well, I think I go back to Karen Bass's statement, the mayor of LA, when she says if the current plan for deportation is carried out, it will have a monumental negative effect on the economy of the entire city of Los Angeles. And you can multiply that several times when we start talking about taking that throughout the state, particular states like Arizona and Nevada, along with California, New Mexico, Texas, Florida. All of those kinds of places are going to suffer tremendously if the deportation thing as planned is carried out. Now, they can play around with the visas and the type of visa it is and trying to get the right folks in and keep the right folks out. One of my concerning issues with that whole mess, Ed, is the private prison piece, the for-profit prisons. Because as we know, when we go back and review the 13th Amendment, there's a little clause in there that you can really enslave people and keep them that way if they've committed crimes and that sort of thing. And my fear is that before people like Elon Musk and those types of people and Donald Trump see the economy of the U.S. go down the drain, we will see a partnership with the for-profit prisons and some of the employers of Hispanics and other people who are here legally and illegally right now. And that is my concern. It'll be a windfall profit for those guys. You'll only be paying them 50 cents a day instead of the $7, $8, $9, $10 a day they're getting now, an hour that they're getting now. And it'll be a windfall profit. And African Americans, being that we are the largest population in the prison system, will bear the brunt of this type of misuse of the 13th Amendment. I am mighty afraid. So when you start talking about dose and all of that other kind of stuff, my thinking goes straight to the for-profit prisons, the African American population in that prison. I go back to my book, The New Jim Crow, by Michelle Alexander, that talks about how prisoners are really used in this new system that we have. And this whole business of deportation and playing around with the visa population and that kind of thing is going to exacerbate this whole problem we got with prisons and profit and using people to enslave them legally based on the understanding of the 13th Amendment.
Yeah, and I don't think that's an overstatement at all. I think it may be an understatement because if you think about the people who are attached to Donald Trump, Val, people like Stephen Miller, and then this new immigration czar guy they have who keeps showing up on TV. I think he's drunk most of the time. I don't know. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that, but he seems to be. But they keep talking about locking people up, right? Rounding people up, and the first thing you got to do is you got to lock them up because there has to be some procedure to get them deported. And I think there will be this intermediate step, like you said, where people go to be housed somewhere. So somebody stands to make a lot of money with this. Here's the other thing. You mentioned California and Arizona and New Mexico. I've been to California, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Utah, all this year, Colorado, Oklahoma, and Texas, all this year, right? And when I looked around, I was looking for this horde of immigrants, Val. I never did see them. Now, I did see a lot of people, working in construction. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the fields working, and a lot of them are supposed to have visas for temporary work visas. That's, of course, if these good Republican people are checking the people's papers, right? They to be sure, they would not hire illegal people, would they, Val? So here's the thing. The economy had been improving. The unemployment rate was low, doesn't appear to be going anywhere unless there's some mass layoffs or whatever. And again, I fly over the country all the time, and most of it is empty. We're not overrun by illegal people. As a matter of fact, illegal people, or whatever you want to call them, undocumented, whatever, somebody hires them, Val. It ain't me or you. So the people who are hiring them have to be people that out of the other side of their mouth say they want them deported, right? Rich people who own companies like fast food restaurants or whatever, they turn out to be the people who hire these folks. What I'm trying to understand and get my head around is what's going to happen if you decide to do some mass deportation and then all of a sudden prices of pick a commodity goes up, right? Because you don't have anybody harvesting them. Because Val, kids living in Raleigh or Atlanta or wherever, they're not just going to rush to do jobs picking fruits and vegetables. They're not. But not just those kids, but white folks in Des Moines and Missoula, Montana, they're not going to do it either. So where's your stuff going to come from? Here's the setup then. Here's the question. If we see any mass deportations, and we get to this point where it's like you said, where they're misusing for-profit prisons or whatever, how many people realistically do you think are going to get deported? Is it all for show more than anything else? I guess is my question, because it seems to be. Because I don't see how this ends where it being productive at all.
I think your assumption is correct, Ed. It's partly for show. This is one of the primary red meat pieces that the Trump administration threw out to his base during the campaign. We're going to get rid of all of these people that has a negative impact on our culture. I'm tired of seeing going down to the DMV and seeing all of the applications and paperwork in 2 different languages. And when you call on the phone, somebody's got to say Espanol Marquidos or whatever, They're tired of that. And he promised that he would get rid of most of that. It's an infringement on the culture of the United States of America. We are an English-speaking nation. We are a European practicing culture, That's who we are. That's what they want this to be. They don't mind non-whites being here, but they want non-whites playing the role that they want them to play. Working in the field, spending every dollar you make to buy the trinkets and the beads and the other things to keep the economy going, signing up for the military, going off to fight wars and doing all these other things that you do. We have a place for you here, but it's not in a place of leadership or a place of command. And so the GOP, led by Donald Trump, knew that there are a lot of white people in America who feel that exact same way. And if you can appeal to these people and say, we're going to get back to that and we're going to make America great again, they'll vote for you, they'll send you their money, they'll do whatever is necessary to see that you get in office. And that's what's been fueling this whole piece of the success of the GOP and Donald Trump and his dominion. And it's going to continue that way until something happens to open the eyes, Ed, of these people who've been snookered and fooled all this time, thinking that I don't care what this guy does, I give him all the power in the world, just keep my culture as it is. I want white European culture to stay on top. And I don't care what happens or who says what about it.
Yeah, so here's the other part to that, Val. The people who say that's what they want, but it's led to this complete disarray in the Republican Party, though. There's a schism because you needed the billionaires' money to win. Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, Mark Zuckerberg, apparently, Bob Iger down at Disney. You just name them. They lined up. They either said nothing, like Jeff Bezos at the Washington Post refusing to endorse Kamala, even though the paper wanted to endorse the staff at the paper, but Bezos not wanting to be involved because he knew he needed Donald Trump to keep his tax cut, right? He needed to be able to keep his yacht that he has for his yacht, right? He has a yacht that hangs off his yacht, right? So you can't lose that. Come on. So Val, this disarray in the Republican Party has a real serious potential to linger into disrupting the certification of the vote, because you got to have a Speaker of the House. And Mr. Johnson, the current speaker, does not curry favor with all Republicans. Some of them don't like him. They claim it was because he didn't buckle to Elon Musk and he cut a deal with Hakeem Jeffries, but he knew that that was the only way to keep the government open, was to cut a deal. And this whole thing about not wanting to deal with the Democrats when it comes to the budget straight up every time. You know, we're on the brink of shutting down the government every time now because of the Republican shenanigans. And when they did close the government, everybody should remember the 31 days we were closed under the Trump administration before, and what kind of effect that had on the economy. So here's the question for you, Val. Speaker Johnson, what is his future? Does he have one? I know Donald Trump says he supports him, but, you know, there are a number of people to the right of Speaker Johnson who say that they're not going to vote for him. And you only need to lose one or two to throw this in complete disarray. Then that means you get into, will you have enough time to have a speaker seated, count the electoral votes, certify the election, and schedule the inaugural? I don't think the inaugural is going to be canceled. I've heard some people say that. But is Speaker Johnson in any jeopardy here?
I don't believe so, Ed. Simply because they'll play games and they'll throw up an alternative to Johnson and they'll do this, that, and the other. I think what it'll really come down to is they'll see that they have a stark choice. That if it's not Johnson, they have to be very worried that it could be Hakeem Jeffries if they are not careful in the way they play this game. And once they see that on the line, and once Trump sees that, and the other big shots in the Republican Party, they'll say, okay, let's just cut out all the shenanigans and let's go with Mr. Johnson, because we can't afford to have a Republican majority and have a Democrat Speaker of the House. There's no way we're going to allow that to happen. So we'll just have to hold our nose and go along with the stuff that Johnson says and does without him being a true MAGA guy. And we know he's not, because he defies the president and the president's staff too often. So we'll have to hold our nose and go along and vote with him anyway. So to answer your question directly, I expect to see Johnson in his second term of the 118th or 119th, I lose track now, Congress of the United States on January 3rd.
Here's the last piece of that. There's been some talk, I've seen some other podcasts where they talked about maybe the Democrats going in there and making a challenge on 14th Amendment grounds about Donald Trump being an insurrectionist, so on and so forth, only to gum up the works, knowing full well there's not enough votes to win anything. My own personal opinion is I'm not sure that gets you anything. It makes you sound like the Republicans when they were doing what they were doing the last time around, saying, you know, the Democrats wouldn't even be saying that, you know, Donald Trump cheated. They would be saying that he's illegitimate because he shouldn't be able to run or should not have been able to run. Nevertheless, he did. They didn't stop that. The Supreme Court said he could do damn near whatever he wanted to, right? Isn't that how it sounded to you when all the opinions came out that, you know, there was some presidential immunity that I don't see anywhere in the Constitution, but they did. Anyway, long story short, Val, last question here in this segment is there any political capital you can gain by gumming up the works? I say no, but, you know, what do you say?
Ditto, no. You know, there are some powerful Democratic people still around, powerful meaning within their party, that want to do this, that, or the other. And so you placate them a little bit by saying, okay, we'll go ahead and file these charges, or we'll throw this piece out there for you. But nobody knows. Nobody's taking that seriously. is just to placate one or two small group of people who want to say that they did everything they could to keep Donald Trump from taking office on January 20th. And he'll take office on January 20th, and that'll be the end of that. We won't worry about that anymore. We'll have to get back down to some serious notions to talk about with the slim majorities in the House and slim majority in the Senate. How can we utilize that to the Democrats' advantage to keep them from running some of these really crazy items down the throats of the American people that have been promised throughout the campaign that they would do, starting with mass deportation. What can we do to do something about that? Starting with changing the way the taxes are structured. You leave it up to Elon Musk, he will have just a consumer tax, no income tax at all. No any kind of tax on rich people, just tax on people who have to spend money to survive. That's how he would have it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I hear some music in my ear when we come back, Val. I want to talk about some international issues. I want to talk a little bit about F around and find out sort of the hashtag that's going around. I also want to talk a little bit of sports because it's been a weird year in sports for me. And I think everybody knows that I got some trepidation about these NILs for college students and all that and what that actually means. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
Needed political boost for Speaker Johnson as he prepares for a big vote on Friday where he can't afford to lose any support. In a social media post on Monday, the president-elect wrote, "Johnson is a good, hardworking, religious man. He will do the right thing and will continue to win. Mike has my complete and total endorsement." 4 words there most Republican elected officials like to hear. Johnson responded by thanking Trump and adding, "The American people demand and deserve that we waste no time." The Trump endorsement comes despite the president-elect's frustration with the speaker and Republicans for failing to raise the federal debt limit as part of the short-term spending deal approved just before Christmas, as he had urged them to do so. Handful of House Republicans said Monday they'll back Johnson now that Trump has weighed in, but others are holding out, at least for now, saying they want further assurances before committing their support.
And welcome back to our third and final segment of the deal. I'm Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. It's the last day of the year, the 31st. Val, I don't think I've made it to midnight in the last decade. I've been asleep almost every year, if not every year, before midnight. I can't even watch Dick Clark, The Rockin' Eve. I fall asleep. I guess it's not a whole lot of reason to be out in the streets partying. I will not be doing it again this year. By the way, I'll probably be asleep again. So that means I will not see balls dropped or acorns or any of that stuff. But there's some people who have already experienced the new year, right? It's already taken place. In some other places, if you're in Sydney, Australia, you already had your ball drop or whatever by the time we record this. Val, speaking of Australia and the rest of the world, we want to talk about some international issues. One of the things that strikes me is that our allies had a very hard time with Donald Trump the first go around. I remember distinctly the the Prime Minister of Australia having some issues with Donald Trump, but nearly every one of our allies did. He was not friendly. He would go to events and push people out of the way at NATO events and all kind of stuff. He's threatened all our neighbors, Mexico, Canada. Val, Donald Trump says we should take Greenland and the Panama Canal. Now, he said that with a straight face. He's called Justin Trudeau, Governor Trudeau, a number of times. Here's the tweet right there, or whatever, his X, or whatever you want to call it, where he says, Governor Trudeau. Val, what the hell? What is the whole point of Donald Trump signaling he's going to be just as much of an asshole as he was the first time to other world leaders? But is there anything specific that you've been able to detect in this whole talk about Greenland and Panama?
All you got to do is go back to the late 1930s and find out how the Third Reich started, how Hitler started talking about Austria, started talking about Poland, started talking about Czechoslovakia. Just give me this, so that we will have land to grow, and I'll be okay. And then we had the Chamberlain guy who thought he was being serious about this, and we could give him this and he'd be quietly gone on his way. And it didn't work that way. Donald Trump thinks that he can be the next Hitler, be the successful Hitler. I really believe that. He thinks that the world is so stupid. He thinks the world is made up of so many ignorant, stupid people because of his days and his time in the business world and real estate, where he could just snooker the hell out of people and buying his neckties, his steaks, his whatever, going to his university, that he thinks he can just do that about anything. Panama Canal, good example. Everybody will be charged an exorbitant fee for using that canal if he gets what he wants. Exorbitant fee. If he gets Canada, the one thing he'll want to say to people, yeah, I noticed that dual citizenship requests have gone up. People are running off to Canada because they don't like the second Trump administration, but you won't be going anywhere that I don't still control. Okay, we're going to get Greenland and drill, baby, drill there, and all of this stuff to promote a complete world domination, to complete what Hitler started. He wanted to dominate the world. It wasn't just Poland or Austria or Czechoslovakia. It was the world that he was really after. I think Trump has the same goal in mind, is to do that, nothing short of that. And people just might as well go ahead and wake up and understand who this guy is and what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I wasn't so worried about that, Val, when Mike Pence was the vice president, because I don't think he had those kind of aspirations. He still was really more of a right-wing theocracy kind of dude, right? And not necessarily because he didn't come from money, so he wasn't an oligarch like Donald Trump is. My fear is that because J.D. Vance is the vice president, that's where the danger actually lies, that Donald Trump is long in the tooth. He's experienced some health issues. He is also not well liked in his party that we just talked about. There's some ranklings amongst the Republicans and people who are usually on the side, like a Steve Bannon and Laura Loomer. And so I think they're more interested in J.D. Vance and whether or not he's malleable enough, because he's certainly young enough. And that's what always scared me most about J.D. Vance and him falling over to the dark side. He can be around for another 30 years, Val, causing trouble everywhere. just like the people they put on the court, like Amy Coney Barrett and those Gorsuch and those clowns they put on the court. These people will be around for the next 30 years. I'll be dead, right? And gone, and they'll still be out there wielding influence. So my grandchildren and people that come after will have to deal with these people. That's my fear, is that you won't be able to get rid of them. It'll be like cockroaches, right? You'd have to find some really good insecticide to get rid of them because they'll be fully entrenched. So your observation about Donald Trump and his aspiration towards dictatorship is purely driven by his greed too. That he I think aspires to power, not just classically like dictators do because they want to have it, that like to dress up in uniforms. Thank God he hasn't put on a uniform, like a Mussolini or a Hitler. Those guys like to play army. At least he doesn't do that. But he wants to be rich. And I think he has a complex that he is not as rich as he really makes out to be. But Elon Musk is, and JD Vance is, and those kind of people. But he has to have them around because I think, again, now I've seen I started watching some predictions, Val, about what people think the year is going to be like. I think Donald Trump being in office puts a lot of pressure internationally on these world leaders about where they're going to come down. I don't think they're going to acquiesce to Trump, but there are some problems. And the first problem I want to talk about internationally is in Israel and in Palestine. We've been talking about this now for over a year, the October 7th events that launched that whole retaliation in Gaza. Gaza almost doesn't exist anymore. There's almost no Palestine left. That they've completely flattened that, Val. And Donald Trump is not going to step in and try to broker any peace deal. He'd rather see it all knocked down because he can put a Trump hotel in wherever, right? And take over the beach because they got some nice beaches, right? That's probably what he's thinking. You tell me, Val, with Donald Trump back in the White House, is there any hope left that there would be a two-state solution? And will there be Trump hotels on the beaches in Gaza?
There's just about as much chance of a two-state solution in Palestine as it was a two-state solution in France after Hitler overran the French government. Now, we have to remember that there was a small contingent of Nazi supporting French people that had this faux government, I like to call it. And that's as close as you could get to a two-state solution in Palestine, that it would be a puppet government supported by and run by Tel Aviv, run by the Israelis. There will be no government in Palestine that was not pre-approved by the Jewish government. None. So that's not a two-state solution. If it's going to be, the only people that can run things are people that you approve of, and they got to call you to get permission to go to the bathroom and those kind of things. That's not a two-state solution. But I think that's what the Israelis and the Americans will try to sell to the rest of the world, that they finally now have a two-state solution. They found somebody within Palestine that hates Hamas as much as they do, and they are willing to run this new state of Palestine as the Israelis want them to run it, and they will have the leadership that has been approved by the Netanyahu, and they'll call that a two-state solution. But you know as well as I do, Ed, that is just as far from a two-state solution as a four-state solution would be. It ain't going to happen. Yeah. The real two-state solution that Jimmy Carter talked about in his book, the one you referenced to earlier in the show. The real two-state solution is out of reach right now. And you need new leadership, and not only in Tel Aviv, you need new leadership in Washington to make a real two-state solution thing happen. We don't have either one now. It can't, a real two-state solution is not doable right now in Palestine. And I think if we're not careful, we will see the lowly little teeny tiny state of Israel that was born in 1948 become the untold ruler of the entire Middle East in short order if we're not careful. They're going to run and own the entire Middle East. I know that sounds weird and crazy, but we're there now. Syria has fallen. We almost have totally forgotten about Iraq. We don't even mention them. Iran is teetering. There's no more Palestine. Egypt and Saudi Arabia want to sign an agreement so they can keep their government in place, right? What's left in the Middle East?
Yeah.
What's
well,
left?
You know,
that's it.
So what I think about all the time, Val, is you see what happened in UAE. You know, people go to Dubai on vacation and spend lots of money and wear bikinis and all kind of stuff. Because I think throughout, it's that part of that westernization of the Middle East that you talk about all the time, right? Is that at some point, that's why I wasn't being facetious about there being beaches in Gaza that people want to put resorts on. That they want to turn that whole thing into some sort of playground. I think the people with money in these kingdoms know that oil revenue is going to be gone pretty soon. They have nearly tapped that out, and the United States doesn't even need to buy oil from them anymore, right? And the rest of the world is doing solar and all this other stuff, and you got electric cars and all kind of other stuff, and they know that their time is up. And so they have to convert it into something. And so you look at a place like Syria and Iran, they also are not Sunni. And so there's some issue where Americans don't have a good understanding of some of the, what do you want to call it, religio-political aspects of the conflicts between an Iran, say, for example, in Iraq and Syria, in terms of how they look at Saudi Arabia and some of those other places in Yemen. They're not friends. None of them are. So America and Israel can exploit that and then have resorts all over the Middle East. And so everybody's just going there to vacation from now on, right? And then you'll see it lose some of its veneer of being religious. Because here's the problem, Val. The Saudis have always been hypocrites. They're willing to cut off certain people's heads for supposed violations of religious laws, but then they violate them themselves all the time, right? And so goes the Emirate over in the UAE, so you get Dubai and places like that. But anyway, enough of that. The other place we need to look, Val, is to China and what's going to happen there. Donald Trump makes a lot of noise about China all the time, but he seems to be pretty buddy-buddy with them. And Elon Musk apparently was meeting with them secretly this whole time. And guess what? He's moved a lot of production for Tesla to China because he did not want to pay American workers in California. So he tried to move to Texas, but he still couldn't get it cheap enough for himself. So then he has to go to China. So now China becomes it was a political discussion during the election where Donald Trump kept saying that he was going to put these massive tariffs on China. But he and his people are having these secret behind the scenes meetings with China. Again, another one of those things that they use as a talking point, but they don't really do anything about. So you tell me, Val, what's going to happen on the Chinese front? Because I don't see imposing all these tariffs that Donald Trump talks about because it would just drive up the price of all the cheap stuff we get from Temu and all these other places. Americans aren't going to stand for that, are they?
Not a bit, not a bit. I think what China is going to do is to remind the United States how interwoven their economic relationship happens to be. It's very difficult to shop at Walmart right now and pick up any item that's not made in China. Very, very difficult. If you look at your apparel and that comes from other stores outside of Walmart, the label will say made in China. It is no question about the disparity between the population of the two countries. As you and I say on this show all the time, the Chinese could lose what is equivalent to the American population and still have 1 billion people left. And so the comparison is not even close. So they have advantages in a lot of areas. We cannot discount that when it comes to economics, because not only do they have the workforce to produce things at a better economic rate than we do, but they have consumers, far more consumers than we do if we want to sell some of our finished products to them. So we have to take all of that in consideration when we're dealing with these guys. Not only that, they are a nuclear power. They can field the largest military force in the world on the battlefield and have it destroyed and replace it again while you're still trying to figure out what's going on. And the most important thing that we have not talked about, Ed, is what we're going to do about Taiwan. What is China going to do about Taiwan? That is a flashpoint. I can see that developing into a global conflict. I can see it really being extended to just keep things as they are for another 30 or 40 years. I don't know what's going to happen, but that bears watching, because that could be the trigger point. Beyond, we're talking tariffs now, and who's really going to pay the price, whether it's going to be the American consumer or the foreign country. But I think Taiwan is the issue with China.
Yeah, I do too, and I think one of the things that we have to be most cognizant of is the whole idea that there's not going to be a problem with Ukraine, right? That Ukraine is still an issue. Well, what are your, wrap us up here on international issues and tell me about what's going to happen with Ukraine with Donald Trump in the White House.
Well, the president Zelensky of Ukraine is really, really crying in his suit right now, because he knows as of January 20th that he doesn't have friends in Washington anymore, and that he might as well get ready to capitulate something. He might as well get ready to make some kind of deal with Russia. Losing part of Ukraine is almost a certainty now. He is in bad shape because of Russia's hold on Donald Trump. And I just think it's a foregone conclusion. We just don't know the extent or how much right now that Zelensky is going to have to be asked to concede to Russia. We just don't know how much.
Yeah. Well, Val, there's so much that we could talk about. We could talk for the next couple of hours on all of this stuff. I think, starting where we did about expectations versus reality ends us in the same place here. Whether you're in the United States or in North Carolina or Florida or wherever you're listening to us from, or Ukraine, Donald Trump is a wild card, and we don't know. We don't have any effing idea how this thing is going to turn out, because he's such a wild card. In addition to that, there's complete disarray with the Republicans and so on and so forth. I'm going to switch gears completely, Val, because today and tomorrow, college football is going to be on. because they expanded to a 12-team playoff for the championship this time. And one of the things that's clear to me watching college football, as little as I did this year, I watch less and less every year. And I think it has to do with the fact that it's a joke that these guys are even in school. And how can you have allegiance to, say, the University of North Carolina or Norfolk State, for that matter, if people are so mercenary that they're looking for a deal? Now, one of the things that happened in North Carolina is this guy named Bill Belichick. I think he used to coach for some team up in New England. Is now the head football coach at the University of North Carolina. He's going to bring a lot of money and also a lot of talent in terms of young men who want to switch to play under Bill Belichick because they think it's the path to professional football. Have we got to the point, Val, where this is just the semi-pro league and they really need to revamp this whole thing and maybe just make a super 32-team conference and let those people pretend like – because they ain't going to class. When I saw Travis Hunter, who seemed to be a nice enough kid, win the Heisman Trophy, his parents looked like really nice people, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But guess what? He had already been at 3 different schools, Val. When you look across the board, all these kids been at 3, 4, some of them 5 different schools because they just pick up, and especially now with the NIL. I'm not saying they shouldn't get more than what they get because they're slave labor for the most part. But have we crossed the bridge here where it's just complete farce now in that, should I even bother to watch the games tomorrow? I should maybe just, go, work in the yard or something else. I mean, what's the reality of college sports now and basketball?
I think we're right in the middle of the fulcrum here. We can go either way, left or right. One way is that we'll fall on the side that everybody thinks this is the NFL or the NBA, in which colleges are allowed to buy the best talent out there and have a 30 or 32 team league, and the best team wins. The best university with the most money can get the best teams and let it go at that. The other side of this fulcrum is to go back the way it used to be a long time ago, where you had to qualify to get into an institution of higher learning. And once you were a regular student within that institution, you could go out for the ball team. And this school put their best 11 guys on the field, or this school put their best 5 guys on the court. And they go at it to see. But you could not play for that team if you couldn't go through the regular, normal processes of being admitted to that school for academic purposes. Now, a lot of HBCUs and other people thought that would be a problem. I think it would be a boom for the HBCUs right now, because that means a lot of the people who are going to play for the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, for Duke University, for Michigan, all these other schools, may end up going to my alma mater, Norfolk State. And it has been proven already that white folks with means, if they want to see good basketball talent, they'll go to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, or Durham, North Carolina, or Greensboro, North Carolina, to watch a great HBCU team play against other people or against another HBCU team. It could be a boom. So I'm not sure which side this thing's going to fall on, the 32 team professional piece or having to qualify to go to school before you can play.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be one extreme or the other.
Well, yeah, as Earl to Pearl Monroe, like you said, folks would go to Winston-Salem to see him play because he was the best basketball player there was. They didn't go over to Wake Forest They wouldn't have went to Salem State to watch those games because they knew they were going to get quality basketball. But you know, Big House or whoever was coaching, and then later, and if you look across people who made the NBA, the NFL, they were coming from HBCUs because that's where the talent was. I just don't know what's going to happen, Val, but it's part of a larger thing, I think, in America where uh, again, money rules everything. But let's just be honest that this is about capitalism and a few people making a whole lot of money. NFL team owners, it works in their favor because you keep this constant hype about who the next big player is going to be, yada yada yada. They get butts in seats when they draft a particular person, right? So New York Giants are dying to get Travis Hunter, for example, out of Colorado, and what that would mean for them, at least in the short term, in terms of making sure Giant Stadium is filled or whatever. Anyway, I just wanted to say something about that because I was like, I tried to watch some of the ball games, and I just got up and walked away. I couldn't do it, especially when the Miami game when Cam Ward didn't come out in the second half. I was like, whatever, man, this is crazy. Anyway, enough of that. Well, Val, we have wasted a whole nother year. Like I said, we expect that next year it's going to be a lot to talk about. I used to have a rule that we didn't talk about Donald Trump during the last 4 years, and if we did, I had to show a picture of him. I guess we're going to have to just scrap that rule altogether because I think we're going to be talking about him every show to some extent because he's going to be doing something stupid. I just know it. And then, like I said, my fear is that J.D. Vance may end up being president, which I'm more afraid of than anything else. But that's that. So any parting words for the year, Val? What do you want to tell people about this year and what you looking forward to next year?
This year coming up, Ed, I think we need to keep the faith. Those who didn't get their wishes on November the 5th of 2024, don't give up hope, keep the faith. Remember, this is the only country in the world that has a chance to destroy bigotry and racism. The only one that has a nice, viable chance to destroy bigotry and racism. We got to stick it out and keep going, even in dark times like this when it looks like we're not winning. Stay the course. It'll happen. We'll be back next year this same time with a brighter story, I promise you.
There you go. Well, I listen. I want to thank all the people that joined us this year, and I hope to grow the audience more next year. We got a lot of exciting things to talk about. We're going to keep trying to expand this as much as possible. We'll be having a lot of guests back in because we got to deconstruct some of this that's going to happen. Because I know it's going to be some crazy shit like every day. I just know it. Anyway, so what I always tell you to do, go out and do something good for somebody today. That's all we ever ask you to do. Come back and join us the next time. Make sure you subscribe or whatever, because if you do, then you don't have to go hunting for us. You don't need to know when we're coming on. It'll pop up in your email or in your feed. So go to Spotify, YouTube, if you prefer Facebook, all the different places, Apple, whatever, podcasts, and find us there, subscribe, and that way you don't have to worry about it. Or go to the website, thedealwithedclark.com, click on the RSS feed, and then you don't have to do anything. It just pops up in your web browser whenever we're on. So Happy New Year, happy holidays, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.